Join ForumIAS Academy, trusted by hundreds of toppers, including IAS Rank 1 Shruti Sharma.
Good evening, aspirants. Welcome to the Hindu News Analysis discussion brought to you by ForumIAS for the date 8th Feb 2023. The list of news articles are given here for your reference. You can have a look at it. So for today, we will be covering 5 topics from economics, governance, science and technology, and also from internal security. So straight away, let us move to the first topic. Coming to the first topic, fiscal consolidation in the context of budget. See, this news article is written by the former chairman of Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council, C. Rangarajan, and by D.K. Srivatsava, who is the former director of Madras School of Economics. See, initially, they appreciate the budget as it caters to the needs of different segments of society, but then they question the budget whether the budget will lead to a sustained growth or not. Let us see what they have to convey, and also regarding statistics they have quoted to highlight how the government budget is not inclined towards a fiscal consolidation. See, fiscal consolidation is a policy that is undertaken by the government to reduce its expenditure so that it could reduce the borrowings of the government both from the external and internal source. So for fiscal consolidation to occur, the government often would focus on reducing the fiscal deficit, which is nothing but the total borrowings of the government calculated as a percentage of GDP. But here in this budget, the government has increased its expenditure. The article says that the government expenditure is estimated to grow at 7.5% for the next fiscal year, that is from the April 2023 to March 2024. But however, the nominal GDP growth rate is estimated to fall from 15.4% in 2022 to 10.5% in 2023 to 2024. So the nominal growth rate for the year 2023 to 2024 will be just 10.5%. See, know that the nominal growth rate means the growth rate that is calculated without inflation taking into account. The article highlights that even though the nominal growth rate is projected to increase, most of the expenditure that drives the growth rate comes from the government side only. But here, the author says that nothing to be worried about the rising government expenditure because the component of expenditure will only lead to positive growth. This is because in the budget 2023, the increase in government expenditure has been highly reflected in the capital expenditure. That is, centre's capital expenditure in this budget is said to be increasing by 37% compared to last year, while the increase in revenue expenditure compared to last year is only 1.2%. So this is a positive sign according to the author, because they say that increase in capital expenditure is good for the economy because it has a multiplier effect. Here the author highlights the data from the RBI from the year 2019 and 20. According to this data, the multiplier associated with the central government capital expenditure is 2.45, while that of revenue expenditure is 0.45. That is, if the government spends rupees 100 as capital expenditure, for example, say an infrastructure project, the outcome or gain from such a spending is rupees 245. That is because the expenditure under a capital account are like investments that will create profit or income. It leads to a two-way transactions, creating an asset to the government. If we take the previous example of an infrastructure project, investment in it will create demand for raw materials, the input requires, and also supply of it. And hence the employment opportunities in the construction sector will also improve. So it will create an income for the newly employed section and also widens the tax base for the government. So that is why an increase in capital expenditure is said to be good for the economy in the long run. Another point to add is the adequate financial capital of the state governments. See, the budget 2023 has dealt with it extensively, as the state governments are provided with the facility of interest-free loans with a repayment period of 50 years. And in addition to it, to boost the capital expenditure of the state government, the central government has provided financial grants to the states, which is about 1.2% of the GDP. This is to boost the capital expenditure of the state government and make them create capital assets. Also, the states are given leverage to increase their fiscal deficit to GDP ratio up to 3.5%. That is, they are allowed to borrow somewhat higher so that to increase their capital expenditure. But the author questions, how are the state government going to invest these funds? Where are they going to invest these funds are also questioned. In addition to all these financial grants and leverage provided to the state governments, the adjustment in tax slab by the recent budget is also expected to drive growth, because the rationalization in tax exemption and rebate of taxes to individuals who earn up to 7 lakh per annum will increase the private disposable incomes. So additional money can become deposit in banks, or people can spend on goods or services. So such rationalization of taxes is set to drive demand in the economy and ultimately lead to an increase in production and growth. In spite of all these positive predictions made out of this budget, the authors are concerned about the government fiscal deficit target. For this, they take the note of FRBM Act, that is Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, which was enacted in the year 2003 to provide certain responsibilities to the central government in matters of fiscal management. That is, to bring a long-term macroeconomic stability, the Act made certain limits on the central government borrowings, debts and deficits. In addition to it, the Act also mandated the government to present the data on fiscal deficit, their borrowings annually, so as to bring greater transparency in the fiscal operations of central government. Know that this got amended in the year 2018, according to which certain conditions are imposed on the central government. They are like taking appropriate steps to limit its fiscal deficit to 3% of GDP and fiscal deficit limit to 3% of GDP by the year 2021. In addition to it, the central government deficit, if it is more than 3% in any fiscal year, then the central government has to state the reasons why the fiscal deficit is breaching the limit of 3%. And in our previous discussion video, we saw that the fiscal deficit for the year 2023 to 2024 is estimated to be around 5.9% of GDP, right? For that, the government has said external economic conditions are the reasons that led to increase in fiscal deficit. Know that alongside the budget, the government will submit a medium-term fiscal policy document. In that document, the government will provide data with respect to borrowings, fiscal deficit, and also with regarding the medium-term forecast. There, the center has not provided the medium-term fiscal growth forecast. In addition to that, the central government has also not conveyed when they will achieve the fiscal deficit target of 3% of GDP that is mandated as per the FRBM Act. Instead, they tell that a 4.5% of GDP level of fiscal deficit would be achieved by the year 2025 to 2026. Second component is the debt to GDP ratio. This is the debt to GDP ratio, where the debt to be around 40% of GDP by 2024 to 2025. But the center's debt to GDP level in this budget has increased to 56.1%. This was from 55.7% in 2022 to 2023. Here also, the MTFP statement, that is the medium term fiscal policy statement, fails to tell when the government will achieve the mandated debt to GDP target of 40%. Also, the author here highlights that the increase in debt is leading to increase in interest payments. He says that in the 2023 budget, if we are spending 100 as a revenue expenditure, nearly 41 rupees are spent as interest payments alone. So the money spent is not productive at all. And to address this revenue deficit, we keep borrowing more money, which might lead to debt trap. This is the area where the author cautions the government. And finally, they talk about the private investments. Here they say that the size of the government is huge and that the government is borrowing almost 90% of source of funds that are available in the market. The author says that out of the total investable resources in India, which is estimated to be around 10.5% of GDP, if we take the financial savings of household sector, it contributes to 8% of GDP, while the net foreign capital inflows are 2.5% of GDP. So totally we get 10.5% of GDP, which is the total investable resource in India. Out of that, 9.4% of GDP are taken by the central and state governments alone. They are leaving just 1.1% for the private sector and non-government public sector. So the source of fund for the private sector has been lessened as a result of it. And because of this, the author says that government has to address this problem and make sure that private sectors have enough fund to invest and boost the economy. Therefore, creating such a space to privates can lead to the government in reducing their fiscal deficit also. This is what the author has to convey. So with this, let us complete this topic and move to the next one. Coming to the second topic, what has the union budget allocated to minorities? See, the budget allocation for the Ministry of Minority Affairs has been reduced for the financial year 2023 to 2024 by nearly 38%. In that, the fund allocations for several schemes that target the empowerment of minorities have been reduced. So in that context, let us know more about the schemes for minorities in India. See, first is the education scheme for minorities. See, the budget allocated for this scheme is just 10 crores. In last year's budget, it was nearly 160 crore. This scheme aims to bring about qualitative improvement in madrasas so that the Muslim children attain the standards of national education system while they undergo learning in madrasas itself. In that way, the financial assistance is provided to the traditional institutions like madrasas so that these institutions introduce subjects like science, mathematics, social studies, Hindi and English in their curriculum. This enables the institutions to provide formal education to children learning from those institutions. Second is about the Pradhan Mantri Jan Vikas Karyakram. See, the allocations for this scheme came down from nearly 1,650 crore last year to just around 600 crores this year. The Pradhan Mantri Jan Vikas Karyakram is a centrally sponsored scheme which is implemented by the Ministry of Minority Affairs. See, the aim of this scheme is to develop infrastructure projects, mainly like community assets in areas where there is an underdevelopment, so that the socio-economic development and infrastructure facilities are provided to the minority communities. And from the year 2018, the areas covered under this scheme increased from 90 districts to 308 districts in 33 states and union territories. And know that the communities notified as minority communities under the National Commission for Minorities Act of 1992 are the beneficiaries under this scheme. That means nearly 6 communities, namely Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, Parsis and Jains notified as minority communities are the beneficiaries of this scheme. Third scheme is the Nai Uddan scheme. See, this scheme provides financial support to the candidates so that they could prepare better for the mains examination. That is, candidates who have passed prelims examination of UPSC, SSC and state PSCs are only eligible for the scheme provided they belong to minority communities. Fourth scheme is the Hamari Dharohar scheme. See, the budget for this scheme has been reduced to just rupee 10 lakh from 2 crore allotted earlier. This scheme is a scheme that is to protect and preserve the rich heritage and culture of the minority communities living in India. In addition, the scheme provides for curating, that is to look after the rich heritage of minorities and like curating exhibitions and preservation of literature and documents belonging to the minority communities. And know that it was launched in the year 2015 and launched by the Ministry of Minority Affairs. Fifth is the Nai Manzil scheme. See, the funds for this scheme has been reduced to just 10 lakh from the earlier allocation of rupee 46 crore. This scheme aims to benefit the youths, both men and women belonging to 6 notified minority communities as mentioned earlier of the age group 17 to 35. Know that it targets people who do not have any formal school leaving certificates. That is, those in the category of school dropouts or educated in community education institutions like madrasas are eligible for the scheme. In that, nearly 30% of the beneficiary seats are allotted for girls or women candidates, and nearly 5% of the beneficiary seats are reserved for persons with disability, but they should belong to the minority community. And know that this scheme provides a combination of formal education and skills to enable beneficiaries so that they could get better employment opportunities and their livelihood is also promoted. So we can say that this scheme promotes skill development for youths who haven't taken formal education. So by providing skill education, the scheme provides employability of those youths. In addition, know that this scheme is implemented through selected project implementation agencies and not by the government directly. So the sixth scheme is the Ustad scheme. See, the monetary allocation was reduced to just 10 lakh compared to 47 crores in 2022 to 2023. This scheme stands for upgrading the skills and training in traditional arts and crafts for development. Know that this scheme was launched in the year 2015 by the Ministry of Minority Affairs, and the aim of this scheme is to upgrade the capacity and traditional skills of master craftsmen and artisans. In addition to it, the scheme sets standards of traditional skills, and through master craftsmen, training of minority youths in various identified traditional crafts and arts are done. Apart from that, the scheme also helps the artisans in developing national and international market linkages and also in preserving some old and distinct art and crafts. So these are the few important schemes that are targeting the minorities in India. In spite of such progressive steps for an inclusive development, the reduction in financial allocations to the schemes we discussed above will not help in achieving the purpose or intentions behind these schemes. So that is the conclusion we can say. And with this, let us complete this topic and let us move to the next one. Now, coming to the third topic, neglecting the health sector has consequences. This news article is written by the former Health Secretary of India, and she talks about inclusiveness and the need for the government to invest in social sectors. The crux of the article is that government should not just be a facilitator of growth. That is, the size of the government should not be reduced as it is the prime instrument to invest in social sectors like education, health and nutrition. Here, she takes note of the National Health Services that was launched by the UK government after the economic impact of Second World War. She is equating such a negative impact of the World War with the COVID-19 pandemic and asks the Indian government to take such welfare measures by prioritizing budgetary funds to health and education. But we have to know that Indian government has been doing it fairly, like extending Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana that provides free food grains to nearly 80 crore poor people, and the schemes to develop 500 backward blocks, improving access to housing through Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, clean water through Jal Jeevan Mission, and toilet facilities through Swachh Bharat Abhiyan are such programs which are promoted in the budget. Also, other schemes like providing employment through the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme and providing opportunities for skill development are also measures focusing social sectors only. But the author questions whether such initiatives are leading to a reduction in inequality. No, right? A recent Oxfam report that got published also talks about widening inequality in India, where the richest to 1% holds nearly 40% of India's wealth. So, to address these, she suggests for a long-term and sustainable growth focusing on education and healthcare. That is, universalization of access to high-quality education, health and nutrition. Here, she quotes data from the National Family Health Survey 5, where in children aged below 5 years, nearly 35.5% were stunted and 32.1% were underweight. If we take the ASR report, that is the Annual Status of Education report, learning outcomes in Indian schools is poor, where many class 5 children are unable to read a class 2 textbooks. In addition to it, the report said that there is a shift in enrollment from private to public school. That is, more students are joining government schools as private schooling is become unaffordable. When this is the scenario, the budget for midday meals is reduced by 9%. And if we take the overall health budget, the budget claims that the percentage of GDP spent on health has gone up by 2.1%. This is even less compared to the target that the Government of India set in the National Health Policy of 2017. And then the author talks about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. She highlights the three major fault lines that got exposed as a result of pandemic. One is the lack of financial risk protection. Second, the weak and fragmented primary health system. And third is the absence of well-equipped and functioning district hospitals. These factors is said to increase in out-of-pocket expenditures of citizens during the pandemic. So, as a result of this, nearly 230 million Indians got pushed into the poverty line. But even in spite of such high spendings from the citizens on healthcare, it could not prevent the large number of avoidable deaths during the pandemic. So, COVID-19 has highlighted the need to invest in public health, especially in building disease surveillance systems and to strengthen resilience mechanisms to avoid any abrupt disruption in normal life. And in addition, she talks about the prime responsibility of any government. She says that the prime responsibility of any government should be to protect the citizens from any eventualities like disaster or pandemic. And so, for that reason, the political leadership of the government should be supported by adequate funding so that there is a proper public health system promoting scientific research and health security that is offered to the people. Now, let us complete this topic and move to the next one. CAR T cell therapy, the next step towards a holistic treatment of cancer. We will discuss this topic from exam point of view alone. In this discussion, let us know what is this CAR T cell therapy and the process involved in it. Firstly, know that this CAR T cell therapy is related to cancer treatments. See, as of now, there are 3 ways of treating cancer. First is the surgery, second is the radiotherapy, third one is the systemic therapy. See, surgery is the oldest kind of cancer treatment procedure that takes out tumor and possibly some nearby tissues out of the body. Whereas radiotherapy uses highly penetrating ionizing radiations like alpha, beta or gamma rays to kill the infective cells on the tissue. Third is the systemic therapy, where medicines are given to act on the tumor. The cancer treatments like chemotherapy and immunotherapy falls under this systemic therapy category. But know that CAR T cell therapy is the advanced treatment when compared to the 2 treatments I have listed here. See, CAR T cell therapy is the advanced because unlike chemo and immunotherapy, mass produced injections or oral medications are not required for CAR T cell therapy. This therapy uses patient's own cells. CAR T cell therapy is a type of treatment in which a patient's T cells, that is a type of immune system cells, are changed in the laboratory so that they will attack cancer cells. See, T cells are taken from a patient's blood itself, as said earlier, and you have to know that there will be a receptor that will be attached to the patient's cancer cell. These are like the spikes shown here are the receptors that will be on the cells. See, T cells are taken and they are modified in the laboratory such that they will express specific proteins on their surfaces. These proteins are known as chimeric antigen receptors. You can see here, right? This is what CAR means. This CAR have tendency to combine with the proteins on the surface of tumor cells. That is, this CAR combines with the receptors that are attached to the patient's cancer cell. Know that this cellular structure modification allows the CAR T cells to effectively bind to the tumor and destroy it. If we say in other words, we can say that the cells that are modified in the labs are infused back into the patient's bloodstream after conditioning them to multiply more effectively. That is, they are modified. That is, the T cells taken are modified in such a way that they keep cells multiplying when injected into the patient's blood. The T cells are even more specific as they directly activate the patient's immune system against cancer. So, the immune system activated by the T cells makes the treatment more clinically effective. That is why they are called as living drugs. This is the process that is followed in the CAR T cell therapy. Know that large number of CAR T cells are grown in the laboratory and given to the patients by infusion. This CAR T cell therapy is used to treat certain blood cancers and it is being studied in the treatment of other types of cancer also. Now coming to the applications part, know that CAR T cell therapy has been approved for treatments of leukemias and lymphomas. These are types of cancer that are arising from the cells that produce the white blood cells, whereas the lymphomas is another type of cancer that is arising from the lymphatic system. But know that the response rate of this CAR, that is the CAR T cell therapy, is varying, as this therapy is 90% successful in certain kinds of leukemia and lymphomas cancer cases, but in cases of other cancer treatments, the efficacy of the therapy is not that significant. But however, the use of this CAR T cell therapy has begun in many countries, including in India. In 2021, there was a news that Department of Biotechnology supported first CAR T cell therapy that conducted at Tata Hospitals in Mumbai. This is where the Advanced Center for Treatment, Research and Education in Cancer is located. But know that each patient's CAR T cell therapy costs around 3 to 4 crores. So that is a challenge which is disrupting the process of developing any technology in cost-effective manners and making it available for the patients. But keeping the cost of therapy in mind, the central government's National Biopharma Mission, with the support of BIRAC, has approved nearly 19.5 crore to a medical team for conducting a first in-human clinical trial of CAR T cells. But as of now, critics argue that CAR T cell therapy will be unaffordable to most Indians because of its high cost. This is all about the news. So we saw what is about the CAR T cell therapy and the applications related to it. So with this, let us close this topic and move to the final topic of the day. Now coming to the final topic of the day, LWE related violence down by 76% in 2022 from cases in 2010, says Shah. See, the Union Home Minister Amit Shah recently chaired the Parliamentary Consultative Committee on Left-Wing Extremism. That is what LWE means. In that, committee meeting, he said that the number of deaths of civilians and security forces was under 100 last year. This is the biggest achievement, as such low numbers of death in left-wing extremism occurred for the first time in 4 decades. In addition to it, compared to the 2010 data, violence related to LWE has come down by 76% in 2022. Then the number of districts affected by the left-wing extremism dropped from 90 to 45. The Home Minister said 3 strategies worked out well for arresting the violence in left-wing extremism. That is, a resolute approach to curb extremist violence. Second one is the better coordination with the affected states. Third one is the development through public participation. In this context, let us discuss what is this left-wing extremism and also about the measures taken in those regions to reduce violence and death. See, the left-wing extremism are known as Naxal insurgency in India. Know that it is a violent movement that originated in the year 1967 in Naxalbari region of West Bengal. That is why the name Naxal is given to this violent movement. Know that this movement was initially motivated by the Communist Party of India, that is the Marxist Communists, and the group of people involved in this violent movement believe in the political theory or teachings of Mao Zedong, who is the Chinese political leader. To be precise, the Naxals strongly believe that the solution to social and economic discrimination is to overthrow the existing political system. They fight against the entire government machinery as they think that the government is fully responsible for the inequality prevailing in the country. And the Naxals also use all forms of violence against the state with an intention of overthrowing it. Later on, this movement has spread across eastern India, mainly in less developed areas of states such as Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, and Telangana. You can see from the picture in the slide, the statistics associated with the deployment of police forces and the regions that are affected by the left-wing extremism are shown here. Aspirants, just have a look at it. Now, if we take the reasons for it, the first reason is the inequitable distribution of resources. That is the failure of land reforms, especially like land distributions after independence, socio-economic inequalities because of unemployment, and a despair about the future are some of the reasons that are set to increase the left-wing extremism in these regions. Then the dishonesty and the self-serving dominant groups in the region. Next comes the political corruption and dishonesty of bureaucrats serving there reduces the trust on the government. This leads to government deficit in the parts of the red corridor regions. Red corridor regions are nothing but the regions affected by the left-wing extremism. Next is the lack of titles to public land cultivated by the landless poor is also said to be one of the reasons. Then the forced displacements caused by mining, irrigation, power projects are the reasons because people end up taking up violent methods when there is no adequate arrangements for rehabilitation. As a result of forced eviction, livelihood opportunities are lost for the people and they join the violent groups to function against the government itself. Finally, know that certain laws prohibit the transfer of tribal lands to non-tribal lands in the 5th schedule areas. But poor implementation of such laws deprive the tribals of their rights over their land, and also they end up losing their land because of their poor financial literacy and access to legal mechanisms. But however, the government has taken some steps to address these issues like security related schemes, which is implemented as a sub-scheme of modernization of police forces. Under the security related expenditure scheme, the central government gives security related expenditure for 70 districts affected by the left-wing extremism to the states in order to provide training and operational needs of the security forces. Second one is the security infrastructure scheme. This scheme is also implemented as a sub-scheme of modernization of police forces. Under the scheme, funds are provided to states for strengthening the security-related infrastructure. Third one is the Civic Action Program. This is one of the important program and it is a sub-scheme under the modernization of police forces which aims to bridge the gap between the security forces and the local people. This is done through personal interaction and the security forces directly communicate before the local people to build relationship and trust with the local people. This is how participative governance is done in the left-wing extremism affected areas. Then there are road connectivity projects for left-wing extremist affected areas for building road infrastructure. And then finally there is the LWE mobile tower projects, that is to install mobile towers in the region to give access to mobile connectivity to the people living there. These are the few steps that are taken by the government of India to address the issue of left-wing extremism. So that is all about the topic. So in this topic, we discuss what is left-wing extremism and the reasons for it, and also the government initiatives that are taken forward to address these rise or to address the violence related to left-wing extremism. So with this, let us complete the news analysis discussion and move to the prelims and mains question discussion. Now, coming to the first prelims question of the day, with respect to the scheme Pradhan Mantri Jan Vikas Karyakram, consider the following statements. Statement 1, it is the special area development scheme designed to address the development deficits seen in minority concentration districts. Statement 2, both the religious and linguistic minorities are the beneficiaries of this scheme. Select the correct answers using the code given below. The options given are option A, 1 only, option B, 2 only, option C, both 1 and 2, option D, neither 1 nor 2. See, in our discussion, we saw the Pradhan Mantri Jan Vikas Karyakram is a centrally sponsored scheme which is implemented by Ministry of Minority Affairs. The aim of the scheme is to develop infrastructure projects, especially like community assets in areas that are underdeveloped and which are occupied by the minorities. The first statement is correct because it is an area development scheme and it aims to address the development deficits seen in the minority concentration districts. First statement is correct. The second statement says both the religious and linguistic minorities. No, this is wrong because in our discussion we saw minority communities that are notified under the National Commission for Minorities Act 1992 are the only beneficiaries under this scheme. That means 6 communities, namely the Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, Parsis and Jains who are notified as minority communities are only beneficiaries of this scheme. So linguistic minorities are not beneficiaries. So the answer for this question is option A, 1 only. Now coming to the second question. This is the previous year prelims question. It was asked in the year 2018. Question 2. Consider the following statements. Statement 1. The Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management, that is the FRBM Review Committee report, has recommended a debt to GDP ratio of 60% for the general government by 2023, comprising 40% for central government and 20% for state government. The statement 2 says the central government has domestic liabilities of 21% of GDP as compared to the 49% of GDP of the state governments. Statement 3, as per the Constitution of India, it is mandatory for the states to take the central government's consent for raising any loan if the former owes any outstanding liabilities to the later. First statement, it is a direct statement. You can know only if you have come across this FRBM Review Committee report. This is correct statement because in that committee report, which was submitted in the year 2017, it said that the debt to GDP ratio should be 60% and the target of 40% limit is given to the center and the target limit of 20% is given to the states. So they said that, according to the report, they said that the targeted debt to GDP ratio should be achieved by the year 2023. So the first statement is correct. So the second option can be eliminated. And the second statement says the central government has domestic liabilities of 21%. No, this is wrong because the central government has the domestic liability of 46% and the state government has the domestic liability of 23%. So this is wrong. So if you eliminate the second statement, D is also wrong. It has to be either 1 or A or C. Third statement says, as per the Constitution of India, it is mandatory for the state to take the central government's consent for raising any loan. This is the correct statement because Article 293 of 1 says that state governments can borrow only from domestic sources, and if they have to borrow if they have any outstanding borrowings from the central government, then the states are required to obtain prior consent from the central government before incurring any debt. This is mentioned in the Article 293 of 3. Hence, the statement third is correct. So, the correct answer for this question is option C, 1 and 3 only. Now, coming to the mains practice question. Discuss the threat of left-wing extremism to India. Briefly explain the Government of India's approach to counter the challenges posed by left-wing extremism. The aspirants can take note of this question. They can write the answers and post in the comment section for which we can have a peer review of it. So with this, we are completing today's discussion. If you understood the topics and if you can understand the way I am teaching, you can comment it, you can like the video and share the video, and also subscribe to the ForumIAS Academy in YouTube channel and also in various social media platforms. Thank you. Have a nice day.